Welcome to this week's Fireside Chat with Jesse. I'm joined today by Joe Applegate, Chief Operating Officer at TimeValue Software, better known as T-Value. Thanks for joining me, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. In preparation for this fireside chat, I watched one or two of your episodes, and I was trying to figure out where the fireside component came, and then I saw it because I was on my phone, so it's small, and that's a fireplace behind you. So to be on theme, I thought that I would light a candle so that we could have a fireside chat. Maybe we would rename it
Fantastic.
flame side chat with T value, but you know,
Hey,
uh, I'm here for the fireside chat, so let's get after it.
representing. I appreciate that. I
Yeah,
think the last time
exactly. It
someone
was
joined
one-sided, so
yeah, no, I think that one of the times I actually, when I first started doing one of the first five episodes, Darren Lease, I don't know if you met him.
no, I haven't.
He actually was sitting in a boardroom and had this obnoxiously large fireplace set up on his TV. And I'm like,
Yeah,
dude, come on.
yeah,
But it makes
yeah,
more sense up in Minnesota than it's 90 degrees in Arizona. But there's no heat. There's no heat. Right? We're good. We're good.
yeah. We don't have a fireplace here in our office of sunny Southern California, uh, so we've been blessed to
That's
with our
great.
headquarter location.
That's fantastic. Thanks for that, Joe. Way to get us started here. So I'm going to dive right in if you don't mind. For
Yeah,
those individuals who have had the pleasure of meeting you, do you mind just kind of introducing yourself and your career to date?
yeah. Yeah, of course. So I'm Joe Applegate, the Chief Operating Officer at TimeValue Software. Since most of this audience is equipment finance, I've only been in that industry for the last couple of years when I first got introduced to it. But to kind of give you more background on myself and how I even ended up there, I actually started out in public accounting. I was a CPA and I worked at PricewaterhouseCoopers for many years. And I started out in the audit practice. And the reason why I wanted to do that is I just wanted to see the internal operating systems of best of class companies. In audit, you get to see a lot of internal controls. You get to read a lot of 10Ks and financial reporting and just to see the guts of well-run companies and you get to talk to a lot of controllers and CFOs and be that annoying auditor that asks a bunch of questions. So I was that
Sure.
individual for many years. Um, and then I had a career shift in consulting after 3 years or so in audit, and that was into more technology consulting. And that was a really unique opportunity because what happened in about 2018, 2019, PricewaterhouseCoopers really started to lean into what they called citizen-led innovation, which was changing how we would innovate at the audit team level, both internally and for our clients. Where in the past there used to be a third party digital transformation team or a centralized digital transformation team that would build solutions for the individual audits or customers, but they weren't closest to our clients. And the people that knew the problem the most were those people, boots on the ground, in the weeds, in the processes that, needed to really create that level of change at that front row. And so they created they took a group of auditors and they dubbed them digital accelerators and they taught them
Oh,
different software skills. A lot of it was low code or no code solutions like UiPath for robotic process automation, workflows with a lot of Excel sheet with like Alteryx, data visualization with Tableau or Power BI. And you can kind of go down that list there of the tooling at that time and I was a part of that core team. And then I had a manager from Copenhagen, and when he moved back to Copenhagen in around 2020, he realized the Danish member firm wasn't embracing transformation in that same way, and the way the U.S. firm was. And so he said, "Hey Joe, do you want to move out to Denmark and do you want to lead digital transformation for PwC Denmark, which is a smaller, I mean the country's 5 million people, so it's not like some huge, ask there." And so I said, "Yeah," and I went ahead and I moved out to Denmark and I kickstarted a digital transformation practice from 0 people. And after a couple years, we were 7 individuals, and we re-engineered a lot of processes and rebuilt a lot of great automation, both
hmm,
internally and then for our customers, and really worked on the storytelling behind that to win big proposals, and it was an amazing experience. And then I got tired of the weather out there for a couple of years. It started to wear on me, and I decided I was going to move back home to sunny Southern California once that consulting arm was much stronger. And so I packed up my consulting, background, and I moved home and was working on a small software product. And then my father roped me in to help him out with TimeValue Software. And so since I didn't, specify that in the beginning, TimeValue Software is a family-run software company, and my father founded it back in 1984. And so I've been blessed with the opportunity to work within the family business. It's been really rewarding and challenging and all the fun in between. So that's what I've been focusing on the last few years and how I first got introduced to leasing because we have a big stronghold in leasing.
Perfect. I mean, not being upset. I mean, you live in Southern California. I mean, the weather is just awesome pretty much all the time.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't say the same about Denmark, but it was a great place to live and a great place to work.
Great, everything over there. It's a good place. Good place. We don't get there
Yeah,
enough.
would recommend it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you for that, Joe. So I guess let's on that. Let's just dive into time value software. So your dad started the company in 1984. I would say it's safe to say you were probably born into that. So I guess just kind of walk me through your dad's story and kind of, the overall organization and what industries you guys.
Yeah, of course. Um, so I always grew up around the business, sometimes in the business, working in there, but really, I would say, dived in a couple of years ago. It always surprises individuals in the leasing market when I tell them that T-Value services a lot of industries beyond leasing. They were like, really? Yeah. So yeah, we service a lot of different industries. We have different product offerings. So, we have a tax set of products. But what most people know is T-Value. That's our flagship product. And that was really launched in 1984. Um, and at that time, it was a hyper competitive market for amortization software and for pricing software. There was a lot of companies jockeying for market position and market share, I should say. And over the last 40 years, we've really tried to stay close to the customer and navigate through those changes by working with our customers. And I think that's what's really allowed us to separate or really separate ourselves from our competitors, really, and become that market share dominant individual, especially in the leasing space. So, today we have about 500,000 users of T-Value across the world. We have active contracts with about 20,000 different companies. There's a number of other companies that don't have active contracts with us because if you think back in the early 2000s, software as a service wasn't a thing, right? You would sell single user licenses of T-Value, and that was perpetual, ownership there. And so we have a lot of legacy software out there, which I think is pretty
Sure.
cool. Every day I talk to a customer, it seems like, and they'll be like, wow, we've been using T-Value for 30 years, and we won't have a record of them in our CRM because they'll call in and ask for something.
And you're like,
So
how's your maintenance going on that thing? I mean,
yeah,
when was the last time you paid for it?
because that one thing that really also separated us is we unlocked our software. So what would happen is you, Jesse, would be in the leasing space, would get a copy of T-Value, and then you would leave the leasing space and go into something like real estate or consumer lending or structured settlements, or you'd become a lawyer and or you'd become, one, two, three, four, five, and then you take your copy of T-Value with you from company to company to company and bank to bank to bank, and
Yeah.
it would spread. And then what we would always do is have our smartest and best and brightest people answer the phones. And back in the day, you would call in for tech support or calculation support, and we still have a core team here in Irvine. That's all they do. We don't outshore, offshore any type of support there. And so we were always just able to stay close to customers and be able to build for what they wanted. And, you know, that I think that's was one of our keys to success behind T-Value.
That's perfect. And I know when I think we met for the first time at the annual
Yeah.
last year, and when Drew kind of was like, "Hey, you got to meet the T-Value guys," I'm like, "T-Value's a company?" Because I'm not trying to be ignorant or anything, but
Yeah.
as someone who sold software for a
Yeah.
decade, you guys were brought up in every single prospect meeting, sale, anything I had. It was like, "Well, what's your pricing engine?" It's like T-Value.
Yeah.
And then when I was like, "Wait a minute," like, okay, I'm sorry, part of my ignorance, but it was just kind of one of those things where I'm like, I've never met anyone.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of the people in the industry use T-Value either directly or indirectly, and they don't know about it. If directly through our desktop software, if you're on T-Value 5 or T-Value 6, soon to be T-Value 7 for those that are listening, that's coming out second half of this year, or the cloud-based product. But a lot of them use it indirectly through our engine, which powers a lot of the biggest service providers, the LTIs, the Odessas, the Constellations, the Lease Paths, right? They use our pricing engine as part of their core product. And so we've always stayed close or try to stay as close with those key customers, and looking forward to just re-engaging more with the leasing market in general. I know that we have had a gap of or we haven't been as present there at some of those trade conventions, but looking forward to rejoining those and being there, which I've been the last few years, and it's been really rewarding.
Well, perfect. And I guess while we're on that topic, we'll just kind of go into that. So, like, was that your first conference? Do you remember your first equipment finance conference?
Yeah, my first equipment finance was the innovation conference in Denver 2 years ago.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, and uh, Christian at North Tech invited me out to speak as part of their panel there, because North Tech is a great partner of ours. We co-built our T-Value Direct product together for our direct integration with Salesforce. And so that was my first time going to equipment leasing conference. And then I went to the annual conference and made a big splash there, being the pickleball guy. I don't know if I mean you heard the story, right?
I saw the photo. You showed it to me as you're standing there on crutches. Someone told me because we're like, yeah, I'm golfing. Someone said,
Yeah.
"Oh man, there was this gnarly injury that happened at pickleball," and I'm like, "Well, are they okay?" And like, "Well, they went to the hospital." No, I think I saw you that night, and I'm like, "Why are you here?" And you show me the photo. I'm like, "Oh, huh."
Yeah.
The
Y-
foot went the other way. Like, it's like,
Yeah, my shin was here, my foot was going the other way. I wrestled in college, and I've always been in athletics, always survived miraculously from serious injury. And I cannot believe that it was pickleball that did me in. Now, my claim to fame was it was the tournament finals, game winning shot, and I jump up in the air and I hit the shot and we win the tournament. But I come down and I snapped my ankle basically. And the only reason why I was putting so much effort in is because my partner, she comes up to me and she says, I won last year. I don't want to lose again. I need you to basically uh, give me your best shot here. So I said, okay, I'll have to put my A game forward. I'm not that good of a pickleball player. I'm just competitive. Um,
yeah.
so I guess the moral of the story is us at T-Value will do what we can to win for you guys.
And next time you see her and forever moving forward, hopefully she always takes your phone call.
Yeah, but when I went to the was it Innovation Conference that was at Nashville, right? Just this last it was
Yep. Yep.
yeah. That was my first ELFA conference back since the annual convention. And the
Yeah.
first person I saw, I was like, "Oh, you're the pickleball guy." So I guess I'm coined or the pickleball guy within a number of the leasing community, but hey, I'll lean into it.
Uh, I guess it could be worse. I
It
mean,
could be worse.
I don't know. 2 years ago, was it 2 or 3 years ago? Weekend warrior, not weekend warrior. My son had a friend had a birthday party, and they're like, "Oh, dads against kids versus dodgeball." I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Let's do this." And next thing
Uh,
you know, I'm the only dad versus eight. you know, like 14 year olds at the time,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm wearing dudes, no support, right? Like no, on turf.
yeah.
I made it to the last kid, like I juked one way, my knee went the other, and I
Oh,
just was like, oh, yeah,
I don't know
okay.
what's worse. You getting injured
Hit me.
doing that, or you
Just,
picking off 8 kids against one adult just systematically, you know?
I was surprised too. I looked like if
Uh,
you picture a seal doing matrix moves, that was me,
yeah,
like just
yeah, I
bobbing,
bet.
like ducking. I'm like, you guys
Uh,
suck. How do you
that's
miss me?
funny.
Like my kid. How do you miss me? Like, oh,
Uh, it's a dangerous sport. Dodgeball, pickleball, you got to watch out.
apparently, or we're just getting older, which I know you're not as old as I am. So it happens to us all. To us all. But yeah, so I guess injury aside, what are your thoughts? Kind of, I saw you at NIFA a couple weeks
Yeah,
ago. Like, what are your just thoughts, Joe, on this equipment finance marketplace? Obviously, you guys have been in it for you know
yeah,
40 years, but
yeah.
as far as like being a part of it and seeing kind of like the relationships in this
Yeah.
industry, I guess
I
what
mean,
is just your thoughts?
a few observations. One, I find it really cool and interesting, the dynamic of the friendly competitiveness within the marketplace. Everyone's very, or not marketplace, within the association, everyone's very friendly and want to help each other out amongst being competitors, which I think is really special and unique. So I really have enjoyed that. Also, people from a friend level are fun. They're fun to hang out with. They're fun to get to know. I could see why individuals would join that industry and stay within it for a very long period of time. I mean, I've only been going to some of these shows for 2 years, but if you compound that over 20 or 30 years, that's got to be pretty cool. And so that I can appreciate. I think from a market perspective within T-Value, the industry is starting to shift on how people are using T-Value, and it's very important that we meet them where our customers are and stay close to that, especially with AI changes coming down the pipeline. And we're starting to see some of those shifts start to happen, and I think it plays well into some of the work I've done in the past on process reengineering and helping customers adopt within that, adopt those changes with my work at PwC. So, a lot of interesting things happening in the future there, and we're starting to see kind of the shift in people's use of T-Value start to happen away from desktop a lot more to our engine. And happy to talk about some of that stuff too. But yeah, it's been a great experience getting closer to NIFA, ELFA, and the other associations.
Yeah, that was my next question in regards to your consulting career right out of college. How did that kind of groom you for where you're at now?
Sorry, you cut
So
out right there. How did that what?
no, like so being a consultant out
Yeah,
of college, right, for PwC,
yeah.
then getting into your software project now. Like, how does consulting and doing all that, exactly what you said, the process engineering, how does that skill set help you with your current position at T-Value?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Would want to think on that. First off, software and selling software is different than consulting. I think we probably are,
I'm going the opposite way,
yeah,
right? I sold
the
software, now I'm a consultant. So
yeah.
you go.
That said, I've always been software adjacent, right? I had a software company in college. I've grown up in a very entrepreneurial family. Software has always been a part of my DNA.
Sure.
Um, the consulting side was really around working through problems and uh, solving the right problem for the right customer and kind of the right way. Um, and so I think that that's where a lot of the skill sets that I had come into play. Also on the strategic side, to make sure we're doing the right things in the right order are very important. Um, so yeah, I mean those are some of the things that kind of pop out immediately. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. And then I guess from a like a technology perspective, like you said, to meet your customers where they're at today, more going to the cloud
Yeah.
as opposed to the desktop version. Like what other
Yeah.
trends are you seeing? And I guess kind of what's coming up with version 7 that people might
Yeah,
want
I
to
mean,
do.
there's a lot of trends that we're seeing, and we've been seeing them for years too. It's not, a light switch. I mean, if I even think back on the number of years ago when we started to have our T-Value integration with Salesforce, we had a large customer of ours that was losing $1 million a year in transposition errors, taking T-Value desktop, recoding it into their CRM, right? Somebody fat fingering that, they would lose $1 million a year in those errors, right? And so we said, hey, we need to build a direct integration into Salesforce. And so that would be an example of meeting our customer where they are. There's a lot of our customers that still use T-Value in that kind of desktop application way, and then they will either do quick pricing or quick quotes or what if analysis, and that's fine. But sometimes they are retyping that into their CRM. And so I think that's one segment. The other segment that I see a tremendous amount of opportunity in that a lot of the independent funders and banks are starting to take advantage of is our T-Value engine. And our T-Value engine, what you could think of that is our underlying pricing engine that powers our desktop product, our cloud product, but we also have it available in a REST API or a .NET SDK engine. And so you can embed our engine
Hmm.
into your process and workflow and really start to see a lot of benefits and efficiencies that way. So what that usually looks like is now, there's been a big push over the last couple of years for like broker portals or vendor portals and customer portals, right? Having our REST API embedded within those portals so you can price upfront with T-Value is where we're seeing a lot of that move. And then as it starts to go through the underwriting process, right, being able to call out our REST API to offer your standard, like to automatically price those deals and then send out those quotes. We see a lot of efficiency that way. And then you're using T-Value more to like reopen up that schedule and make some edits if you need to. Um, and then flowing through all the way to docs where you're presenting, for the certain states that require it, APR disclosures, the TILA disclosures there, and then it's going to get booked, and then using it by and then service on your back end, whether that's LTI or Odessa or whoever, and then having that consistency with pricing all along that chain from the upfront pricing broker portal all the way to the servicing side of it. So we're seeing a lot of customers use our API to really focus in on innovation there. But it could be used for a lot more too, frankly. Um, we see customers use it for asset valuations and yield, like solving for yields and things, because at the fundamental level, it's really time value of money calculations, right? It's solving for four unknowns. It's like a
Sure.
present value, a future value, an interest rate or a yield or a term. And so if you can take this series of cash flows or pricing data, you can do a lot with it within that engine. And then if you can't do it, you can reach out to us and we'll figure out how to build it so that we can do it within that engine. And we've done that for many, many years, working with our customers to be able to expand our calculations for them to be able to do what they need to do. Um,
Sure.
we wrote the book on skip payments, right? And those skip months with Caterpillar Finance. Like that's what we've always done. So
Perfect. And I guess kind of what's been the market's perception of you guys kind of jumping not back in, you've always been in, but forming more of a presence at these events. I know you're traveling, visiting clients and stuff like that too. How's
yeah,
that how's that been
it's been so
received?
amazing. It's been great just for me personally to connect with a lot of our customers. I see a lot of opportunity. I see a lot of customers that maybe we haven't connected with in some time where,
Sure.
I know they can be extracting a lot more value out of time value software and their product, which that excites me to know that. I also know that just from an industry perspective, there's such a focus on, speeding up the time to funding to fund those leases or loans and really working on some of those process efficiencies. And so being a part of those conversations is pretty cool.
Nice.
So, every conference I've been to, I've walked away with a new relationship, a new perspective, and I find it to be just a really great use of time.
Got it. So from a version 7 perspective, what are
Yeah.
some new features coming that you're
Yeah, yeah.
seeing?
So version 7 is just our latest version of our desktop software. Right now
Yeah,
we're on 6. A large part of the industry is still on 5, which was released back in 2001. 5 was a great
it's,
product.
it's a little bit ago. It's a little
Yeah, a little bit ago, but it's a great product. And I
bit.
sometimes, if somebody sends me a 5 schedule, I'll still open it up in T-Value 5. T-Value 7 is going to feel very similar to 6 and 5. I mean, we're a 40-year-old product, right? That's kind of crazy to say.
Yeah.
So we are mature in that sense. We've just really tried to work on, we rewrote actually the calculation engine on 7 to give us a lot of adaptability to be able to build quicker and more enhancements into 7. There are a number of things that are, improvements, auto updates, be able to edit event names. We're working on adding more advanced calculations. We have a couple in the pipeline with EU APRs and actual will be coming out shortly on that. Um, I can go down that list. But for those that don't know, T-Value has kind of we've had this forever, but a 1 year back money guarantee. So if you never liked the product, you could always reach back out to us and we'll refund it. And with 7, right? If you're on 5 or 6, it's very easy to get up and running on 7. So you could always just reach out to me or the company and just download it and give us your feedback. We're still
Hmm.
finalizing that product. So we've
Yeah.
actually have hundreds of users using it in production, and we have some big banks on it already that really like it over 5 and 6, and they're getting, direct feedback into the roadmap too. So you can always work to do that or evaluate, if you want to say, hey, can we integrate with Salesforce or Microsoft D365 or whatever, we can do that too.
Any preference in regards to if your clients have it on-prem versus, using your REST API?
Yeah, that's really their decision. I think developing with a REST API is significantly easier than a .NET SDK. It's just so much easier, So I oftentimes recommend for the customers, especially like if you were to put yourself as like a bank, an independent lender, the REST API is easiest. If you're a really large software provider, like an LTI or Odessa, they oftentimes go with the on-prem version for a number of reasons behind that. So it just depends on the specific use case and also just the industry too. Beyond just the leasing market, kind of depends there. But I would say REST API is easy to do, and then as we work with that customer, if we think the SDK would be a better match for them, we would let them know.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, it's always, you're seeing more of the industry going more towards cloud and everything else. And
Yeah.
so I just had to ask the question to see what your preference is.
I mean, you can be up and running on the REST API and call it within 2 minutes. I mean, like if somebody reached out to me right now and said, Joe, I want to try the REST API, they could be, literally calling our T-Value engine in 3 minutes, very, very easy to use. And
So,
I
Joe, I
think
asked
that point,
everyone who, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that point is interesting actually, because you know, because we serve so many different industries, we've had to make T-Value easy to use across a lot of different industries. I think sometimes when you niche into a specific industry, the software can get very complicated, and there's a lot of things that just aren't needed. And so, I think that has been a blessing behind T-Value, and also a reason why we have such market share is because it's easy to use.
And then what would you say your number 2 vertical is? What's the what's
Yeah,
the
we do a
vertical
lot.
that you have?
So we do a lot in leasing. We do a lot in just consumer lending, automotive, a lot in structured settlements.
Structured settlement one, that was interesting, but it makes
Yeah.
sense, right? It makes sense.
Yeah, when you have to do a present value of those annuities.
If you need cash now, what's the T value of mine?
That's right. We power all those commercials. You need cash now. That's going to be T-Value behind the scenes there. We do a lot in just various fintech softwares that have a
Mhm.
loan module or amortization module, or you know
Makes sense.
that just they it's really interesting because what tends to happen is a large software or service provider will say, "Hey, we can build a calculation engine." And they grab the formula out of a math book and it works for a certain percentage of leases or loans. And then quickly, as they start to say, okay, man, there's some irregularities in this day counting. Oh, we have to add on these type of computation intervals. Oh, we have to do one, two, three, four, five, six. You quickly say, there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to replicate 40 years of pricing knowledge for customers saying you need this. And so then they reach out to
Yeah,
T-Value and then we work to integrate it.
yeah,
And so, that's where we hear it, where we get a lot of leads that way. And then we get a lot of leads just from our sheer 500,000 users and different industries that say, hey, we want to automate this. So,
sure, sure. It's a great point. Um, Especially it's like, oh yeah, I can build this, and it's like, why? Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so Joe, I ask everyone who comes on the program to give me a little fun fact about themselves. So,
Hmm.
what do you enjoy doing outside of work?
Yeah, that's a good one. Um, I'll give you two fun facts. I'll be an
Huh?
overachiever here. On a personal side, I love to fish. I love fly fishing. That's one of my favorite things. Recently, the last couple of years, I've gotten more into saltwater fishing.
Huh?
I live in Newport Beach, makes it easier to fish in the ocean there. So that's been really fun. I love just being outdoors there. So that's kind of a fun fact on maybe a fun fact about time value software that a lot of people don't know is I would say at one point we probably could have staffed an Olympic team of wrestlers. Like our office staff could have been an Olympic level, US Olympic level wrestling team. And the reason is my father wrestled in college. I wrestled. A lot of our network has been through wrestling, and naturally we're just very tapped into that talent group. And so, I would not want to break into our office. And we also settle things a little bit differently here. So thank goodness we have a lenient HR group. It wouldn't be uncommon to see some guys wrestling around here and there in the office. So that's a fun fact about the company culture.
And yet it's pickleball,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, new
not
rule, no
wrestling.
no pickleball allowed within the company, but wrestling is okay.
Wrestling, it's like, got it.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Um, and then I guess in closing here, Joe, why should someone want to do business with yourself? Software.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the biggest thing, Jesse, is that we're independently owned. We're a family-run software company. That really carries a lot of weight today when I think the software space is very private equity, venture capital backed. We get to allocate capital the way that we want. We get to handle customer relationships the way that we want. And we take a 20-year time horizon on some of these, customers and thinking about them, right? And wanting to work with them. And that comes with a lot of benefits when you want to partner with somebody like us. Um, I think that is a really unique thing that time value software offers. The other is just being close to a customer is in our DNA, and wanting to work with them so that we can empower their business. Uh, so I think those are a few things. Um, and I like to think we're just fun people.
I guess I didn't ask how many employees do you have?
We have about 35, 40 employees.
All in SoCal or spread throughout the country?
We are mostly all in SoCal. Yeah,
Okay.
there's a couple here and there. We've been trying to get more of the employee base, back in office. But COVID since then, there was people that went remote, and it's been challenging.
Perfect. Well, Joe, it's been a pleasure getting to know a little bit more about your background. Congrats. You know, step into not your dad's footprints, but being a part of the legacy of your
Yeah,
father's company.
yeah.
And
Thanks for having me on. It's an honor to be a part of the famous, Consult Disrupt Fireside Chats. My fire
hey,
went
man,
out over here. I thought I couldn't smell this anymore, so I had to put it out. But
it's okay.
yeah.
It's okay. Mine's still there, but not there.
Too funny. Well, thanks, Jesse. Appreciate it.
All right. Sounds good, Joe. Have a good day. Talk soon.